What's up, fellow floaters? I'm Maile Navarro, and I am so glad to be back in 2026. I know I'm late, but if you've ever tried to move through the holidays while grieving, then you know that time stops making sense. Your brain files for divorce, and suddenly it's almost February, and you are still wearing the same emotional sweatpants that you were wearing on Christmas Day. If you're new here, welcome, and if you are returning, then I'm going to assume that something in your life also went very, very wrong. Especially because I have not released an episode since December, and yet, here you are back for more. This is Honestly, I'm Fine, the show where we talk about grief, boundaries, healing, and all of the ways that life does not go according to that cute little vision board that we all made at 22. I want you to think of this as the opposite of a soft grief podcast. There are no platitudes here, just real life, some dark humor, and the occasional emotional flamethrower. This episode is one close to my heart. My 9-year-old son died in the summer of 2024. We just passed that 18-month mark, which is one of those milestones that means absolutely nothing, except now people expect me to somehow be healed, to be over it. People expect me to somehow be better. But I am not over it. I am not healed. I am just now barely learning how to exist in a completely different universe than the one that I thought that I was going to be in for the rest of my life, and I am expected to do it without losing my shit in the Whole Foods parking lot. Let's just clear something up right away. There is no right way to heal. There is no right way to grieve, and anyone who tries to tell you otherwise is lying, selling something, or has never had their life detonated. There is only your way, and I promise you that even your way will keep changing without warning. I'm a pretty new age, spiritual, woo woo kind of girl. I believe in the afterlife. I believe that energy doesn't die, it can only transform. I believe in energy healing, manifesting, intuition, and signs, and the deeply weird experiences of feeling your dead child's presence in a way that is not symbolic or poetic, just real. This is the lens that I'm speaking from today. You don't have to share my beliefs here. I am not here to convince you. I'm not recruiting. Take what resonates with you and toss the rest. If something annoys you, that is also fine. Annoyance still counts as engagement. Today, I'm talking about what happens when you lose your sense of self after trauma and loss. What boundaries actually are and why people react to them like you slapped their dad. Why the people closest to you tend to fight your boundaries the hardest. How to say no without ever having to explain or apologize yourself into a corner. And how my spiritual, energetic approach to healing fits into all of this, even when it makes certain people uncomfortable. This is not a 5-step formula. There is no glow up at the end of this. There is no inspirational ending. This is one grieving mother's path told honestly and an invitation for you to honor your own, even if it looks messy, inconvenient, or offensive to people who prefer the old version of you. So let us start here. When something truly traumatic happens, your personality kind of melts. Everything that you thought you knew about yourself gets thrown into a blender with no lid. On paper, people call it trauma and nervous system overload and shattered assumptions about safety. In real life, it feels like, who the fuck am I now? And why does the grocery store feel like a war zone? Before my son died, my role was very clear. Be the strong one, be the caretaker, be the emotional sponge. I could absorb everyone's feelings and keep the peace and still be reasonable. I could sit in cancer wards and manage schedules and still make sure that everyone else in my life was okay. After he died, that person was gone. My nervous system basically threw up its hands and said, "We're done. We are not doing that shit anymore. You can barely shower and remember passwords, and you are not going to emotionally babysit grown up adults on top of all of that crap, too." Sometimes after trauma, you end up with no boundaries at all. You say yes because you're too tired to say no. Sometimes you want to ghost the entire planet and disappear. Both are normal. Neither means that you are broken. It means that your system is working overtime to keep you from completely falling apart. The turning point for me was a tiny internal voice that started to say, I cannot do this anymore. It wasn't in this dramatic way, not like I'm leaving my whole life kind of way, more like I literally can't keep up playing the role that I used to play. That little nope is the moment that a boundary is born. So let us talk about what a boundary actually is without all the extra fluff. A boundary is simply what I will and will not allow in my life, my body, in my time, or my energy field. That's it. It's not a moral failure. It's not a personality flaw. It's not being a bitch. It is a line. In real language, it sounds like, I do not talk about this topic with you. It sounds like I do not respond to texts at midnight. It sounds like I do not let you raise your voice at me. It sounds like I'm not going to say yes when my whole body is screaming no. It is not punishment. It is not revenge. It is not the silent treatment. And it is not proof that you suddenly don't care. If anything, boundaries are what let you keep caring without losing your own damn mind. Boundaries are how you stay present in your own life without getting dragged under by everybody else's life. For a long time, I thought that love meant flexibility to the point of self erasure. If you hurt me, I bent over backwards to try to understand you. If you crossed the line, I quietly moved the line. If you dumped all of your pain on me, I tried to hold it, even when mine was already overflowing. But that, my friends, is not love. That is self abandonment dressed up as compassion. That is codependency in a cute outfit. Love with no boundaries turns into resentment and exhaustion. Love without boundaries sounds more like I care about you and I care about me, and we are not sacrificing one for the other anymore. And here is where it gets fun. The second you start saying no, some people act like you have joined a cult. If you have spent years as the reliable one, the strong one, the peacemaker, the doormat with good hair, your new limits are going to absolutely freak people out because the old script said that you don't say no to family, you don't say no to people who love you, and you always show up for them no matter what. You are so easygoing and you don't make a fuss. Now you're saying things like, actually, I do say no now. I do not always show up, and I'm not going to be easygoing when it comes to my sanity and my grief. What they hear is, you're controlling me, you're punishing me, you have changed. The honest answer is yes, I have changed. My child died, my world exploded. It would be terrifying if I have not changed. People who benefited from you having no boundaries and constant access to you and your energy, your endless emotional labor, you explaining yourself on a loop, are not going to throw a parade because you finally grew a spine. They are absolutely going to push back. They're going to test you, and they may call you names like selfish, dramatic, cold, or tell you you're not who you used to be. And they are right about one thing. You are not who you used to be, and you should not be who you used to be. The version of who you were didn't survive this. A new version is being born, and she's just not in the mood for bullshit. Now I need to say the part that might make some people uncomfortable, and I'm completely okay with that now. My son is dead, and I still have a relationship with him. Not in the sense that I pretend he didn't die, but in the sense that I still feel his energy, and that is so real to me. That I talk to him, I feel him, I ask for signs, and I receive signs. I get them. I believe in the afterlife. I do not think consciousness evaporates because our body stops. Because of that, how I spend my time and energy now feels extremely sacred to me. I don't mean that I float around being peaceful and enlightened. I mean that this is the only nervous system that I have to live in this life, and I'm not going to hand it over to other people's drama, even if they're the ones that I love. In my head, boundaries are energy math. If an interaction leaves me feeling like I have been hit by an emotional truck, that is data. If a conversation pulls me so far away from myself that I can't feel my son or my intuition or even my own thoughts, that's a problem. If I need a 3-day recovery nap every time I talk to that person, my body is begging for a boundary. Energy practices help me claim that. Sometimes that looks like simply putting my hand on my heart while someone is talking and silently saying, I have you. Sometimes it looks like imagining a shield of light around me before picking up a call from a known chaos generator. Sometimes it looks like breath work when I am triggered so that I don't completely leave my body or go freaking nuclear. Manifesting for me now is very different from what it used to be. It is not, I attracted my child's death. That idea is cruel and it is wrong. Anyone who says that to you is not your friend. Manifesting for me is this question. Given that this horrific thing has already happened, what kind of life do I want to slowly build around this crater? So I manifest safe people. I manifest clear boundaries. And I manifest work and relationships that do not require me to disappear to keep the peace. I'm not calling in a perfect life. I am simply calling in less chaos, less bullshit, and more room for my actual soul. Let's talk about the mind games that show up when you start living this way, because you are not imagining them. One of the first things you might start to see or feel is guilt. You say, I cannot do that. And they say, wow, after everything I've done for you. Translation, I am used to you ignoring your limits, and I would very much like you to go back to doing that. The second one is emotional outsourcing. You say, I need some space. And they say, but you're making me anxious. You're making me depressed. And suddenly it's your job to fix that. Here's the truth. You are not a human antidepressant. You are not a walking emotional support animal for adults who refuse to deal with their own feelings. The third one is minimizing your reality. You say, that hurts me. And they say, well, you're being too sensitive, or you should be over this by now. They act like they are the official judge of how much grief you are allowed to have and for how long. Newsflash, they are not. There is no timeline where being over it exists. After your child dies, there is no reasonable expectation or timeline for that grief. There is only learning to carry it. There is only building a life around it. There is no over it. The fourth thing you might hear or experience is something called spiritual gaslighting. You say, I need a boundary. And they say, if you really forgave me, you would do this or not do this. A good mom or partner or daughter would never act like that. Real spirituality does not require you to be someone's doormat. Real forgiveness does not mean you're volunteering for more harm. So what does it actually mean to find yourself in the middle of all of this? It does not mean going back to who you were before. That person is long gone. It means meeting the person who survived. One way to meet that person is through grief-honest journaling. You ask yourself questions like, who am I now? Who am I after all of this? What do I truly not have the capacity for anymore? Where does my body say no while my mouth is saying sure, no problem? You are not journaling to win an argument on the internet. You are journaling to hear your own voice again. Another way is simply listening to your body like it is a brand new therapist. Pay attention to who makes your chest tighten when their name pops up on the caller ID. Notice who leaves you buzzing or shaking after a conversation. Notice who you feel calm in the presence of and who you can actually breathe with. Your body is not being dramatic. It is actually giving you an instant review of every interaction you're having all day long. 5 stars, safe. 1 star, get the fuck out of there. Then there are energy practices. Maybe you put one hand on your heart and the other on your belly, and you breathe slowly until your system stops freaking out. Maybe you imagine roots growing from your feet down into the earth when you feel like you are going to be blown away. Maybe you picture your kid or your loved ones or your guides or whoever you're connected to with one hand on your back while you have that hard conversation. Every time you do that, you're saying, I'm not abandoning you anymore, to yourself. And then there are tiny boundaries. You don't have to start with the hardest person in your life. You can save that level for later for sure. Start by practicing using small things. You can tell yourself, I can answer that text tomorrow. You can say, I cannot make it this time, and then you don't go. You can let your phone ring without grabbing it like it's a grenade. Each small no is one rep in the gym of self-respect. Let us get practical about words, because in the moment, your brain will shut down and your mouth will probably panic. You can say, that doesn't work for me. You can say, I'm not available for this conversation right now. You can say, I care about you and I need to set a boundary here. You can say, I'm not able to take that on. You can say, I'm not going to discuss that topic. You don't actually need a closing argument. You don't need a full-blown thesis. You are allowed to just state your limits. My favorite trick is the broken record. Pick your sentence and then say it. They push, you repeat it. They escalate, repeat it again. For example, you say, I'm not having this conversation with you right now. No matter what they throw at you, that is the line you hold. You also add a consequence and then you actually follow through, not a punishment and not a threat. You say, if you keep raising your voice, I'm going to leave. Or you say, if you keep bringing this up after I have said no, I'm going to end the conversation. The first few times you follow through, you might feel like you swallowed an actual live grenade, but that doesn't mean that you've done anything wrong. It means that your nervous system is experiencing something completely new. And after age 35, you literally have to make a conscious effort to rebuild these new neural pathways. It's creating new behavior. You are basically teaching an old dog new tricks. It's one thing to do all of this with a coworker. It is a whole other animal when your person is woven into your story. A parent, a sibling, your partner, an ex, a co-parent. someone who has also been living through this loss but is living it in a completely different way. Those boundaries hurt. A part of you still wants them to suddenly just get it, to wake up, to show up, to suddenly become safe. You are allowed to say, I want this relationship to be healthy, but it isn't right now. You are completely allowed to say that I care about you, but I cannot keep interacting like this. And you are allowed to say that I can coexist with you, but only within inside these limits. If this is someone that you have to keep dealing with, maybe because of kids or a shared history, you can just keep it simple or businesslike if you have to. Stick to logistics instead of diving into old emotional storylines. End calls that turn into attacks or guilt trips. You stop explaining the same boundary 20 different ways. You are allowed to build an emotional life where this person no longer sits in the front row of everything. Let's talk about the boundary hangover. You set a boundary, you stand your ground, and you got through the moment. But then you crash. You may cry, you may shake, you might feel like you're the worst person on earth. And you might even wonder, was I too harsh, too cold? Am I being selfish? That feeling, those feelings are not proof that you've done the wrong thing. That is simply your brain processing everything that you just experienced. Because your old wiring is saying, we are going to get punished or abandoned for this behavior. You might also start feeling a fresh new layer of grief. Grief of the old version of you who kept everyone comfortable. You may feel grief for the fantasy version of the relationship that you wanted, but you just didn't have. Grief for the fact that protecting yourself means losing closeness with somebody you wish you could still trust. And when that hits, that is when my spiritual side becomes oxygen. I often have to feel my own heartbeat, put my hands on my heart, and say, my needs do matter. My healing is important, and I am allowed to protect my peace. I'm allowed to honor my child by honoring myself. Sometimes I just talk directly to Kingston. I say, okay, buddy, help me. Help me stay here with myself. Help me not go back to shrinking just to make other people feel comfortable. And that is when I feel him. Sometimes it's a physical sensation. Sometimes it's this weird little sign that shows up later to validate everything I've tried to do. Sometimes it's just that suddenly I can take a deep breath. That connection is part of what holds me when guilt and grief are trying to double team me. If you are still here with me, then you are my people. You have lived through something that split your life in two, and you have carried more than you ever should have had to. If you're anything like me, you're probably exhausted from being the strong one, while other people sit on the sidelines critiquing how it is you're healing, how you're not healing, how long it's taking you to heal. Hear this. You are not selfish for needing space at all. You are not wrong for changing. You are not cruel for saying, I can't keep doing this. Your grief gets to be weird and spiritual and messy and profane and holy, or none of it. You get to talk to your dead people. You get to pull oracle cards. You get to go to therapy or not. You get to scream in your car, and you get to do Reiki and take medication and pray. You get to say fuck and say bitch whenever you want, and you sure as hell can cry in the Target frozen food section. That is all valid. There is no grief referee. And if you know one, they don't belong there. Your boundaries today get to reflect who you are now, not who you were forced to be before. So before we wrap this up, I want you to think of one tiny boundary that you are willing to practice this week. Just one. Not on your whole family, not even throughout your whole life. Just something small, something tiny, one for you. Maybe it's I don't answer emotionally loaded texts after 8 p.m. Maybe it's I'm not available to talk about that topic. Maybe it's I'm going to pause before I say yes and actually check in with my calendar and my body. If nobody has said this to you lately, let me be the one. You are doing just fine. You can't do this wrong. Even if you feel like you are doing everything wrong, even if your healing is incredibly chaotic and unpredictable and messy and spiritual and it's profane and contradictory, even if your boundaries are wobbly and you only nail them once every third try, you are allowed to live your best life badly at first. You are allowed to figure it out in real time along the way. There is no judge's panel. There's no scorecard. There is just you, still here, still breathing, in a world that tried to break you. So live your best life. Fuck them if they don't get it. Fuck the people who want the old convenient version of you. Fuck the rule book that says that grief has a timeline and boundaries needs everyone else's approval. Screw the idea that you have to look enlightened while you are still literally crawling out of last Christmas's pajamas. You are allowed to be loud and cry too hard and to not wear makeup or change your mind. You're allowed to switch your path 50,000 times. You're allowed to believe in an afterlife or nothing, energy or none, signs, manifestation. You don't have to have your shit together. That is not a failure. That is human. If your mantra right now is, honestly, I'm fine, and what you really mean is, I'm not fine at all, but I'm still here, I'm here, that counts. That absolutely counts. Here is your permission slip. Keep doing it wrong. Keep setting sloppy, imperfect boundaries that you have to adjust every once in a while. Keep loving who you love, here and on the other side. Keep choosing yourself even when your voice shakes and somebody begs you not to. This is your life right now, unfiltered, unpolished, imperfect. And honestly, that's just fine. Before we go, here's the part where I shamelessly self promote, and you get to decide exactly how much of me you can tolerate. If you want more of this, some of this chaos, make sure that you're subscribed or following the show wherever you're listening. If there's a button that you can tap that says follow, subscribe, add, favorite, whatever, hit that one. All of the links to my world are in the show's notes. You can follow me, message me, quietly lurk from a distance like a respectful creep. You control me if you want to, just know that I will block you for sport. You will also find my book, Zuma's Magical Balloon. It's technically a children's picture book, but it has a suspicious history of making grown men cry in airports and in parked cars. Consider that your warning label. You'll also be able to find my grief and signs journal. It's called You're Not Crazy, You're Connected, and it's for anyone who keeps noticing things and then immediately gaslighting themselves about it. If you're half convinced that you're losing your mind and half convinced that your loved ones are talking to you from the other side, this one is for you. So follow the show, stalk me on all of the platforms, buy the things if they call to you. If not, ignore them. You're the boss, you're in charge. Whatever it is that you're doing right now today, know that you're doing it just fine. I've been learning how to live with what I can't undo. Some days I break, some days